The fluorescent lights of the courtroom cast harsh shadows across the polished wooden floor, but nothing was colder than the triumphant smirk on the platinum blonde woman's face as she fanned herself theatrically in the gallery. Rachel Morgan, 34 years old with deep brown skin that glowed despite her exhaustion, watched her husband Marcus sign the divorce papers with his mistress Victoria seated directly behind him, her manicured hand occasionally brushing his shoulder in a gesture of ownership. "Finally, we can put this unfortunate chapter behind us," Victoria stage whispered to her friend, loud enough for the entire courtroom to hear. "Marcus deserves someone who can match his ambitions, someone more appropriate for his new status." Marcus Sterling, once the struggling entrepreneur Rachel had supported through countless failures, now CEO of a tech company built on her connections and capital, glanced back at Victoria with an appreciative smile before turning to Rachel with cold indifference, the gold Mont Blanc pen in his hand, a gift Rachel had given him for their 10th anniversary, moved across the signature line with decisive strokes. What neither Marcus nor Victoria realized was that Judge Eleno Gutierrez, a veteran jurist of Puerto Rican descent who had presided over family court for 3 decades, had seen this scenario play out too many times. She was about to transform their premature celebration into a nightmare they never saw coming. Rachel Morgan wasn't always the broken woman sitting in that courtroom. With her MBA from a state university she'd worked 3 jobs to afford, she had been the strategic mind behind Marcus's success. Every investor meeting he'd bungled, she'd salvaged with follow-up calls. Every business plan he'd sketched on napkins, she'd transformed into professional presentations. Her network, carefully cultivated over years of genuine relationship building, had become her pathway to success. The betrayal hadn't started with the affair. It had begun with 1,000 small erosions of respect, each one so subtle that calling them out would have seemed like paranoia. It started when Victoria Pemberton joined Sterling Tech as Marcus's executive assistant 18 months ago. Fresh from her Ivy League MBA, she carried herself with the kind of born-into-privilege confidence that made Rachel hyper-aware of her own public school background. "Oh, Rachel, that's such an interesting way to pronounce hors d'oeuvres," Victoria had commented at their first company gathering, her laugh tinkling like expensive crystal. "Did you know it's actually French? Marcus really should take you to Paris sometime so you can hear it authentically." The comments escalated at every corporate event. When Rachel mentioned she'd never been skiing in Aspen, Victoria gasped dramatically. "Never been to Aspen? But that's where everyone winters. Marcus, you simply must expand Rachel's horizons. It must be so limiting for your career to have a wife who isn't comfortable in certain circles." The word certain carried weight that everyone understood, but no one would acknowledge. Rachel had grown up in Oakland, raised by a single mother who cleaned office buildings, including, ironically, the very building where Sterling Tech now operated. She'd fought for every opportunity, earned every achievement, but in Victoria's world, that meant she was trying too hard. Marcus began parroting Victoria's opinions within weeks. "Maybe you should consider taking some etiquette classes," he suggested, after a client dinner where Rachel had used the wrong fork for her salad. "Victoria knows someone excellent, very discreet." "I've been attending business dinners for 12 years, Marcus," Rachel had responded, hurt bleeding through her voice. "Yes, but attending isn't the same as belonging, is it?" The casual cruelty of his words had left her speechless. The discovery of the affair had been almost anticlimactic after months of emotional abandonment. Rachel had known the moment she smelled Victoria's signature perfume, Tom Ford's Black Orchid, on Marcus's jacket after a supposed late-night strategy session. The lipstick on his collar 2 weeks later was just confirmation of what her heart already knew. But it was the financial betrayal that transformed her hurt into strategic fury. Rachel discovered it accidentally while reviewing their joint investment portfolio. Over $300,000 had been systematically transferred to various accounts over 6 months. When she investigated further, she found Marcus had taken out a second mortgage on their home, the home her grandmother had left her, which she'd foolishly put in both their names without her knowledge. The private investigator she hired, a former FBI forensic accountant named James Chen, uncovered the full scope of the deception within 2 weeks. "Your husband isn't just having an affair," he told her, sliding a thick folder across his desk. "He's systematically asset-stripping your marriage. These transfers coincide with luxury purchases, a Mercedes G-Wagon, a boat, jewelry purchases from Cartier and Tiffany, all gifts for Miss Pemberton." The photos in the folder showed Marcus and Victoria at exclusive resorts in Cabo, the Maldives, and Monaco. All trips he'd claimed were crucial business conferences. In one photo, Victoria wore a diamond necklace Rachel recognized. Marcus had told her it was stolen from their home safe during a break-in that she now realized had never been reported to police. "There's more," Chen continued, his expression sympathetic but professional. "They've been meeting with a real estate agent about properties in Connecticut. The down payment they're planning to use matches the amount transferred from your joint accounts." Rachel stared at the evidence of her erasure. They weren't just planning a future together, they were building it on the destruction of everything she'd helped create. That evening, when Marcus came home whistling, Rachel played her role perfectly. "How was your day, honey?" she asked, taking his coat. "Productive, very productive." He barely looked at her, already scrolling through his phone, where she knew Victoria's messages waited. "I might need to travel again next week, another conference." "Of course," Rachel replied smoothly. "You work so hard. You deserve some relaxation." He looked up then, suspicious of her accommodating tone. For months, she'd been questioning his travel, his late nights, his emotional distance. This sudden acceptance clearly unsettled him. "Rachel, are you feeling all right?" "I've just been doing some thinking," she said, setting his favorite whiskey in front of him, Macallan 18, which he now knew he'd been sharing with Victoria in hotel rooms across the country. That's very mature of you." Mature, as if she were a child who'd finally learned to behave. The next morning, Rachel met with her attorney, Dr. Camille Rodriguez, a Cuban-American woman who'd built her reputation destroying unfaithful spouses who thought they were cleverer than the law. "Your husband is typical," Rodriguez said, reviewing the evidence with a predator's smile. "He thinks because you came from humble beginnings, you'll accept whatever scraps he throws you. He's about to learn that those of us who've had to fight for everything are much more dangerous than those who've had it handed to them." The plan Rodriguez outlined was brilliant in its simplicity. Rachel would continue playing the defeated wife, even accelerating Marcus's timeline by suggesting mediation instead of a contentious divorce. When arrogant people think they've won, they get sloppy. And sloppy people make mistakes that we can document. Over the next 2 months, Rachel became the image of defeated acceptance. She stopped questioning Marcus's absences, stopped checking their accounts, stopped attending company events where Victoria would be present. To outside observers, she'd given up. "I'm worried about Rachel," she overheard Marcus telling his brother on the phone. "She's just accepted everything. It's almost too easy." Too easy. If only he knew that she was recording every conversation, documenting every transfer, screenshotting every social media post where Victoria flaunted gifts purchased with Rachel's money. Victoria, drunk on her perceived victory, became increasingly bold. She started showing up at Rachel's workplace, a non-profit where she served as development director, supposedly to discuss charitable giving from Sterling Tech. "Rachel, darling," Victoria purred during one visit, loud enough for Rachel's colleagues to hear. "I wanted to discuss our corporate giving strategy. Marcus feels we need to elevate the company's philanthropic profile, partner with more prestigious organizations. No offense to your little charity, of course." Rachel's little charity had raised $30 million the previous year and served 10,000 underprivileged youth, but she simply smiled and offered Victoria tea. "That sounds wonderful, Victoria. Marcus is lucky to have someone with such vision helping him." Victoria preened at the perceived compliment, missing the way Rachel's assistant, Maria, was carefully documenting the entire interaction on her phone at Rachel's earlier request. The humiliations became a weekly occurrence. Victoria would accidentally run into Rachel at the grocery store, her cart full of expensive organic produce, while making comments about Rachel's practical choices. She showed up at Rachel's gym, hiring Rachel's personal trainer and loudly discussing how she needed to maintain her figure for her man, while giving Rachel pitying looks. The final straw came at a mutual friend's wedding. Rachel had RSVP'd months ago, but Victoria arrived as Marcus's +1, wearing a dress identical to the one Rachel had shown Marcus she'd bought for the occasion. The cruelty of it. Marcus had clearly shared the information, was breathtaking. "Great minds think alike," she said loudly when other guests noticed. "Though it certainly looks different on different body types, doesn't it?" Rachel excused herself to the bathroom, not to cry, as Victoria probably assumed, but to forward the video Maria had just sent of Victoria using the company credit card, technically embezzlement since she wasn't authorized, to purchase the dress. The universe seemed to conspire in Rachel's favor. Victoria, intoxicated by champagne and victory, posted constantly on social media. Photos of her and Marcus at restaurants with captions like, "When you finally get the life you deserve, #upgrade, #better things, and "Some women are wives, others are queens, #know your worth." She even live-streamed portions of a dinner where Marcus, clearly drunk, ranted about how he had traded up and how the divorce would be simple because Rachel knows she's getting more than she deserves with the standard settlement. "Standard settlement?" Victoria had laughed on the video. "Baby, you're too generous. She should be grateful for anything after holding you back all these years." Rachel's attorney couldn't believe their luck. "They're building our case for us. It's like they want to lose everything," Rodriguez marveled. 3 weeks before the divorce hearing, Marcus made his biggest mistake. Confident that Rachel was beaten, he presented her with a settlement agreement that would leave her with almost nothing, $50,000 and her car, while he kept the house, investments, and business assets worth over $2 million. "It's more than fair," he said, sliding the papers across their kitchen table, the same table where they'd once spread business plans and dreamed of building an empire together, "because I built the company." "You built it," Rachel repeated slowly. "With some help, of course," he conceded magnanimously. "But let's be honest, Rachel. The connections that matter, the ones that took us to the next level, those came from Victoria's network. Pemberton doors that someone like you could never open." Someone like you. There it was, finally, the thing he'd been thinking but not saying for months. "You're probably right," Rachel said, maintaining her facade of defeat. "I should be grateful for what you're offering." His eyes lit up with relief, and worse, satisfaction. He thought he'd won. "I knew you'd be reasonable. We can file the papers next week. Uncontested, quick, clean." That night, while Marcus slept beside her for one of the last times, Rachel lay awake finalizing her strategy with Rodriguez via text. They'd prepared a different set of papers, ones that Marcus would sign, thinking they were his version. The fool hadn't even bothered to have his own lawyer review them, so confident was he in his victory. The morning of the hearing arrived gray and drizzly, perfect pathetic fallacy for what was about to unfold. Rachel dressed carefully in a simple but elegant black suit, the one she'd worn to her grandmother's funeral, the grandmother whose house Marcus had mortgaged without her permission. Marcus arrived at the courthouse in his Tesla, Victoria at his side in a white designer suit that seemed chosen to mock the occasion. She carried a fan, an actual fan, as if she were attending a garden party rather than a divorce proceeding. "Rachel," Marcus nodded curtly, then turned to his lawyer, a slick-looking man named Bradley Harrison, who'd handled Sterling Tech's corporate matters. "Let's make this quick. I have a meeting at noon." They filed into the courtroom, where Judge Elena Gutierrez presided with an expression of studied neutrality. Rachel noticed the judge's eyes linger on Victoria's theatrical fanning and Marcus's smug expression. "This is a simple, uncontested divorce, Your Honor," Harrison began smoothly. "Both parties have agreed to the terms." "I see," Judge Gutierrez said, reviewing the papers. "Mr. Sterling, you've signed this agreement." "Yes, Your Honor." Marcus's voice carried absolute confidence. "We've both agreed it's best to move forward quickly." "Mrs. Sterling," the judge turned to Rachel, "do you agree to these terms?" "I agreed to the terms in the signed agreement, Your Honor," Rachel said carefully. Rodriguez stood then. "Your Honor, if I may clarify the terms for the record." "Proceed," the judge said, though something in her expression suggested she already knew what was coming. "The agreement Mr. Sterling signed stipulates that he transfers 75% of all marital assets to my client, including the house, investments, and his shares in Sterling Tech. Additionally, he agrees to pay spousal support of $15,000 monthly for 10 years. The color drained from Marcus's face so quickly, Rachel thought he might faint. "What? That's impossible!" Victoria shot to her feet, the fan clattering to the floor. "Marcus, what is she talking about? You said everything was handled." Harrison frantically flipped through his copy of the papers. "Your Honor, there's been some mistake. Is that or is that not your client's signature?" Judge Gutierrez asked coldly. Harrison examined the signature page, his face growing pale. It appears to be, but, Your Honor," Rodriguez continued smoothly, "I'd like to present evidence of systematic marital asset fraud." She began laying out documents with practiced precision. Bank records showing $347,000 in unauthorized transfers to accounts belonging to Victoria Pemberton. "That money was a business investment," Marcus protested. "In Miss Pemberton's jewelry and vehicle purchases?" Rodriguez produced receipts. "This Mercedes G-Wagon, purchased for $150,000, is registered in Miss Pemberton's name. These Cartier pieces, totaling $75,000, were purchased with funds from the Sterling joint account." She pressed play on a tablet, and Victoria's voice filled the courtroom from her live stream. "Some women are wives, others are queens. Thanks to my baby for knowing the difference." "Your Honor," Rodriguez continued relentlessly, "Mr. Sterling took out a second mortgage on a home inherited by my client from her grandmother, forging her signature on the documents." "Forgery?" The judge's voice was sharp. "That's a serious allegation." "We have a handwriting expert's analysis confirming the signature doesn't match my client's. Furthermore, the notary who allegedly witnessed it has confirmed she was out of the country on the date in question." Victoria turned on Marcus, her voice shrill. "You told me she agreed to everything. You said she was too simple to understand the finances." "Shut up, Victoria," Marcus snapped, realizing her every word was damaging him further. "Too simple?" Judge Gutierrez repeated, her voice dangerously quiet. "Mr. Sterling, did you assume your wife was too simple to protect her interests?" Your Honor, I didn't mean..." Rodriguez wasn't finished. "We also have evidence of Mr. Sterling hiding assets in offshore accounts, totaling an additional $500,000. And this recording from a dinner last week." Marcus's drunken voice echoed through the courtroom. "Rachel never understood that she was holding me back. Victoria gets it. She knows what league we're playing in. Once this divorce is done, we're buying that place in Greenwich. Rachel can go back to Oakland where she belongs." The silence that followed was deafening. Rachel could hear Victoria's labored breathing, see Marcus's hands trembling as the magnitude of his situation became clear. Judge Gutierrez removed her glasses slowly, deliberately. "Mr. Sterling, you've committed fraud, forgery, and theft. You've systematically stolen from your wife while conducting an affair with Miss Pemberton, who appears to be a willing accomplice in financial crimes. Your Honor, Harrison attempted weakly, perhaps we could discuss a modified settlement? The settlement Mr. Sterling signed will stand. Additionally, I'm referring this case to the District Attorney's Office for criminal investigation. Mr. Sterling, Miss Pemberton, you are both advised to seek criminal defense attorneys. Victoria began sobbing. This isn't fair! She tricked us! No, Rachel spoke for the first time, her voice calm and clear. You tricked yourselves. You were so convinced of your superiority, so certain that I was beneath you, that you never considered I might be intelligent enough to protect myself. Marcus stared at her as if seeing her for the first time. Rachel, please, we can work this out. Think of what we built together. What we built? Rachel stood, gathering her dignity around her like armor. What I built while you took credit, what my connections, my strategic planning, my grandmother's house as collateral made possible, that's what you want me to think about? She turned to Victoria, whose white suit was now tear-stained and wrinkled. You wanted the life you deserved, Victoria. Congratulations. You're about to get exactly what you deserve. This isn't over! Marcus shouted as court officers moved to ensure he didn't leave. I'll fight this! With what money? Rodriguez asked coolly. Your accounts are frozen pending investigation. Sterling Tech's Board of Advisors has already called an emergency meeting to discuss your removal. Oh, and that conference you're supposed to attend next week? They've rescinded your invitation after we forwarded them evidence of your embezzlement. The last image Rachel had of Marcus was him slumped in his chair while Victoria screamed at him about ruining her life. The woman who'd thought herself so superior was reduced to shrieking like a harpy, her carefully constructed image in ruins. 6 months later, Rachel stood in the CEO office of Sterling Tech, now Morgan Technologies, renamed after she'd acquired Marcus's shares. The company had thrived under her leadership, securing 3 major contracts that Marcus had fumbled while distracted by Victoria. The final settlement has been approved, Rodriguez called to inform her. You've received 80% of all assets, the house free and clear, and Marcus must pay $20,000 monthly in spousal support for 15 years. The criminal charges are moving forward. He's looking at potential jail time for the forgery. Marcus now worked as a junior sales associate at an electronics store, his reputation in tech destroyed. Victoria had fled to Florida, where she was reportedly working as a receptionist at a dental office. Her social media accounts, once full of boasts about her upgraded life, had been deleted after the recordings went viral, and she became a cautionary tale about gold diggers who count their money before they have it. The sweetest vindication came when Rachel ran into Marcus at a coffee shop. He was wearing a polyester uniform shirt, his former swagger completely gone. Rachel, could we talk? He said hesitantly. She regarded him with the same calm that had unsettled him in court. We have nothing to discuss, Marcus. I wanted to apologize. I was wrong about everything. About you. No, she corrected him. You were wrong about yourself. You thought cruelty was strength, that prejudice was sophistication. You confused my kindness for weakness and my patience for stupidity. Victoria was exactly what you wanted, someone who shared your values. The problem was, your values were worthless. She left him standing there diminished and defeated. But her victory wasn't in his destruction. It was in her resurrection. Every success she achieved, every deal she closed, every life she improved through her nonprofit work was proof that the barriers he'd tried to build around her were made of nothing but prejudice and air. Rachel now spoke at universities and conferences about overcoming betrayal and bias in business. Her story had become legendary, not as a tale of revenge, but as testimony to the power of intelligence over ignorance. When someone tries to diminish you based on where you come from, they reveal not your limitations, but theirs. The greatest victory isn't proving them wrong, it's proving yourself right.